Bonjour Robert Zemeckis, merci d'avoir accepté notre invitation. Vous avez réalisé de nombreux chefs-d'œuvre comme la trilogie Retour vers le futur, Forrest Gump évidemment, ou encore Flight plus récemment. Vous êtes ici pour nous parler de votre nouveau petit bijou, Bienvenue à Marwen. Et on échangera également sur votre Steve Carell. And did you two meet with the real Mark Hogancamp?
Yes, we both met with Mark, and we spent a day. At the very beginning, we spent a whole day with him and spent time at his home and just hung out with him and asked him many questions. But I picked Steve Carell, who was a big fan of the whole story from the very beginning, because he's such a versatile actor. He's able to do both. He's a magnificent comedic actor, and he's a fantastic dramatic actor. And so I needed someone who could play both the lightness and the comedy when he's performing the doll, and to be able to give us the emotional power of when he's playing the injured and Mark character.
Actually, the working title was The Women of Marwen. So I wanted to know, was it very important, this dimension of the story, the women?
Yes, it was very important. As a matter of fact, it was important because it was important to the real Mark Hogancamp. I mean, this idea that women are the saviors of the world, and in his case, they're his protectors and his guardians and the people who are the ones that were his protectors on his journey.
Obviously, you work, well, it's not obvious because when I saw the movie, I asked myself, how was it done? But you worked with performance capture. How did you work with the actors and the dolls?
Well, the only time we had real dolls is when we were doing the live action scenes, and of course the actors had the dolls that look like their doll characters would in the virtual part of the movie. When we were shooting them as the dolls, there were no dolls, there were no sets, there were no props, it was just performance capture, where the actor basically just performs in a void of digital volume, if you will, as if they're doing sort of black box theater. And it's just all about the acting and the acting and the acting. And then I put the cameras in the cinema in later. But it's really, you work very quickly when you're doing performance capture, and it's all about the performance.
Did you improve the technique while making this movie?
Very much so. I mean, I did the first performance capture movie when I did the Polar Express, and that was 20 years ago. So we have actually have advanced the performance capture to a point where we'll call it this. The performance capture we use in Welcome to Marwen is the most sophisticated that's been done. The real physicality of the actor's face and sort of wrap it around the virtual doll.
No one is eligible for an Oscar for a performance capture role. I have the impression that people think that it's more a graphic designer job than an actor performance. What's your opinion?
Well, yeah, it's hard for people to understand how it works. So I think that as time evolves, that things like that will obviously change. But in the case of Welcome to Marwen, every one of the dolls, every one of their movements, I think the best way to describe it is when a musician plays a keyboard, and then through the computer, an entire orchestra comes out. That's sort of how performance capture works in a visual sense.
David Thompson, who's a film critic, said about you, no contemporary filmmaker ever used special effects in a more dramatic and narrative purpose. I think it's what defines your films, beyond the fact that your films are very diverse. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't do it consciously. I do think that I definitely look for ways to present images, or tell the story using images that we may not have ever, in ways that we haven't seen before. But I always start with the story and I always start with the character. But I do think that, you know, we go to the cinema to see the world in a way that only the cinema can present. And so if we can do that in a way that's always different and interesting, then yes, then I use the technology that's at hand to do that.
I think you kind of found the perfect balance between technology and emotion. And I think that's what makes you very close to Steven Spielberg. Do you agree with that? And what exactly did you learn from him?
Well, you know, Steven is my contemporary, and you know, I love his work, and we're filmmakers that embrace the technological aspect of the art form. It's always been a technical art form, and it's always been a combination of art and technology. And so I think that, you know, to embrace it and to use it as a tool to present, like I said, stories that are cinematic and present that spectacle is something that both Steven and I actually embrace and enjoy doing.
And I think that even though you love technology and putting technology in your films, I have the sense that the most important thing is emotion. Is that true?
Absolutely. I think, I mean, that, you know, even though my films have all this technological spectacle in them, the thing that attracts me to a story and what makes me want to make a movie is always what the emotional core is and what the emotional journey is that characters are going through.
Driven by the music in your films, so I want to talk a bit about Alan Silvestri, of course, who's one of your most trusty companions. How do you work together?
Well, Alan is the first person that I show the movie to. You know, when I do my first cut of the movie, I show it to him, and he's like my creative soulmate. So he keys in on the most important aspect of the movie, which of course you were mentioning, which is the emotion. And the way I work with him is I speak to him like I do an actor. I never talk to him in musical terms, if you will, or in music technique. I talk to him about what I think the audience should be feeling in a specific scene, and what emotion I like to put forth. And that's how we speak. So I direct him like an actor, and he gives me feedback like the audience. So it's a great combination, a great working, you know, collaboration.
So he starts to work on the music after he's seen the movie?
Absolutely. Unless there's a situation where we have to have songs in the movie, like when we did Polar Express. So we had to have these songs before we could shoot anything. But when it comes to the actual score, yes, he doesn't write anything until he sees the first images.
And which score did you prefer?
Of all of them?
Yeah.
Oh, I love them all. Everyone is magnificent in their own way. They're really great.
So it's impossible to choose.
It's impossible.
One of filmmakers is a lot into the Nouvelle Vague and this kind of cinema. Bob Gale and you were more about just Hollywood. Why was that?
I think because we both grew up in the Midwest, and we came from, you know, the middle class Midwest. And when we grew up, there wasn't like we didn't grow up in New York or in Los Angeles or San Francisco where there was an international cinema. So our diet of cinema was, you know, the pop culture American films, and that's what we saw in the cinemas and what we saw on television. So when we got to film school, we had to learn about, you know, people like Godard and, you know, Francois Truffaut. We learned that in film school. We didn't have the ability to see those films back in the day when we were young kids.
Well, I'm Miss Bonnie Parker, and this here's Mr. Clyde Barrow. We rob banks.
I read you decided you wanted to be a filmmaker after seeing Bonnie and Clyde with your father. Does this movie still represent something particular?
Oh yeah, oh, it's a beautiful film, and magnificent performances are in it, and I'm such a fan of the director. You know, he's so, you know, just so great. But yeah, that still resonates with me. I mean, it was the first film that I saw that I realized the power of the cinema to move me emotionally. So that was very important in my development as a filmmaker.
In all the films you've made, what's your favorite one? What's the one you preferred making?
I love them all. They're kind of like, you know, asking me to choose my favorite child. You know, they're all important in their own way. But I think maybe the film that was maybe my most cinematic film was probably The Walk.
And people ask me, why do you risk death? For me, this is life.
My favorite is Forrest Gump. I think, like a lot of people, Forrest Gump and Back to the Future are probably the films people talk to you the most. Why is that?
Well, they were the most popular ones, I think, and they're the ones that have the most, if you will, longevity. There seem to be, you know, people enjoy them in generation after generation. But I think that the reason that people enjoy them so much is because I think they really, in both those films, they really, you know, can identify with the characters, and they're moved by the characters in those films.
Now, my mom always told me that miracles happen every day. Some people don't think so, but they do.
I think Forrest Gump is the one that's the closest to Marwan, actually. Do you agree with that?
I think so. I think so. I think they're two stories that sort of have the same sort of elements of sadness, if you will, but also hopefulness. And so I think that they're kind of connected in that way.
Forrest Gump!
Just
the last question. What can we wish you?
Wish me?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Just, you know, pretty much all I can say about, you know, my journey here in the world of cinema is that I'm very grateful, and and it's been a dream come true. So I guess you can just wish me the ability to keep making movies, you know, because that's what I love doing.
Is there something left that you really want to do very much? And
not specifically, but I still think I've got a couple of good movies left in me.